Last year I played Pokemon Platinum with Sudowoodo, and it did not go well. I had a really rough time late into the game because I forgot that the move Rock Polish is a TM in Generation 4. I'm not going to make that same mistake today. That said, I still don't have high hopes for the Sudowoodo line. Rock types in general don't fare well in solo challenges. My primary evidence for this statement is my Nosepass playthrough, which you might have missed because I put a question mark in the thumbnail. So is Rock Polish going to change everything and give the Sudowoodo line an easy time in HeartGold, or is it going to be just as painful, or perhaps even more painful than the Platinum playthrough I did last year? Let's find out. These are the rules for the solo challenge. You can find them in the description later if you want to reference them. Okay, so we're starting as Bonsly. This is a terrible Pokemon at the beginning of the game. Its only two moves are Fake Tears and Copycat. Luckily, it learns Flail at level 6 and Low Kick at level 9. Beyond that, it gets Rock Throw, Mimic, Block, Feint Attack, Rock Tomb, Rock Slide, Slam, Sucker Punch, and Double Edge. The last of these moves is important to mention because I'm going to be running Rock Head as my ability today. Previously, I had some software glitches around the ability assignment, and I figured out why that was taking place in Pokemon Platinum. Essentially, whenever I receive my starter, my software reconfigures all of its stats so that these runs can be fairly ranked at the end of my videos. The main thing that's occurring during this step is all of my IVs are being set to perfect values if I'm running Hidden Power Dark, which I am because it's banned in all my first playthroughs of these Generation 4 games. When my IVs are set to the proper values, my ability is also set to the proper ability. However, the ability the Pokemon actually receives is based on their personality ID, and I was not resetting that number appropriately to get the correct ability. What this means is that superficially I was changing my ability, but then when my Pokemon evolved, its ability would be reset to the correct value based on the personality ID. Welcome any new viewers. I tend to like to go in depth on things. Sorry, it's probably really boring already. Anyways, this is what's happening behind the scenes with ability today. I have corrected this so we will have Rock Head throughout this entire playthrough. You might think that it would be better to run Sturdy, but prior to Generation 5, Sturdy does not save you from moves that do enough damage to knock your Pokemon out. It only saves you from one-hit KO moves like Fissure. So that ability is essentially useless in a solo challenge like this. Rock Head, on the other hand, is going to be great with a move like Double Edge. And Sudowoodo, once it evolves, will also gain access to Wood Hammer, a grass-type move that deals massive recoil. But it won't today, it just has base power 120, and it's going to be very satisfying to use. For base stats, Bonsly has 50 HP, 80 attack, 95 defense, 10 speed, and special attack, and 45 special defense. I always feel like this is a rock type with high-ish special defense. That isn't really the case. It's not a great stat, especially compared with the physical defense, but it's better than having like 10 in this stat as well. The extremely low special attack is actually really good because no stat points have been allocated there, and the only special move that Bonsly can learn is Hidden Power, which again is banned. I'm not using it. Through TM and HM, I don't get access to much coverage, mostly normal moves, and then Dig, Brick Break, and Thief. Here's the unfortunate thing. This is actually only 2 moves, because I can learn Dig and Thief, but Brick Break is only available in the Battle Frontier, and it costs 40 BP, essentially making it unavailable during solo challenges. Today I have chosen the Totodile starter, meaning the rival's going to be picking Chikorita. This is by far his best team, still in HeartGold. It was always the case in Pokemon Crystal. Once it evolves to Bayleaf in Azalea Town, it has Razor Leaf, which is just going to be so strong against us. Plus, it also is pretty defensive, and that will be a problem, but not right now. In the first battle, I have Flail because I trained a little bit more to get access to direct damage, and I can knock it out since it doesn't have any grass-type moves at this point. Before Violet City, I'm going to fight pretty much every trainer, as well as all the wild Pokemon that show up. My goal is just to get Low Kick as soon as possible. That said, it's not that good inside of Sprout Tower because Bellsprout have low weight, and the effective power of Low Kick is only 10. So Flail, even when I'm in green health, is still the better choice. If I was playing this challenge again, I definitely would have allowed Bonsly to take damage and avoided the Pokemon Center as much as possible. I think I could have got through this area slightly faster if I was doing more damage per turn using Flail. The downside that I was running into here is the fact that I just keep running out of PP, so I have to go back out, heal in the Pokemon Center, and then go back to the tower, wasting a bunch of time. With a medium slow growth rate, Bonsly is not leveling up particularly quickly in the early game, and after beating both of the bird keepers inside of the gym, I'm still not level 14, so so I don't have access to Rock Throw. I had to heal, so I picked up the Hard Stone and the Rock Smash HM before doing that. Now, I give Bonsly the Hard Stone, but this won't help during this battle. For Falkner, I'm gonna have to rely on Flail and Low Kick. Unlike in Generation 2, the Pidgey and the Pidgeotto do not have access to Mud Slap, which is really good for Bonsly. The Pidgey has Sand Attack, and I thought it might be prioritizing it since I resist its other move, Tackle, but it doesn't. It just uses Tackle twice, and then on the final turn it's in battle, it does use Sand Attack, lowering my accuracy by 1 stage. Overall though, I'm not too worried about this. This drops my full accuracy down from 100% to 75%, but I think I can do enough damage to the Pidgeotto. After all, Low Kick has a base power of 60 against it. Now here's a fun interaction. My first hit does about 1/3. Then Pidgeotto heals with Roost, removing its flying type, meaning it's a mono normal type, so now Low Kick is super effective, and it does more than half. Honestly, Falkner, not a very good play. Also, because of this, he's never going to be able to use Roost consistently to save his Pidgeotto. If he's using it, I'm always going to be doing more damage and eventually knocking it out. So the first gym leader ends up being very easy. And with this win, I can now learn Rock Throw in the place of Copycat, a move that is essentially useless. Now I have a same type attack bonus rock type move with the Hard Stone, which boosts it by 20%. And the next gym leader is Bugsy, a bug type specialist with an ace that takes 4 times damage to rock moves. And after that, I have to take on Whitney, a normal type specialist, which I resist, and I have Low Kick for her Miltank. Things are looking pretty good in this section of the game. Prior to Union Cave, I pick up the Shell Bell. For now, I'm not going to be using it. I still think the Hard Stone is better at this point in the game. Rock Throw's accuracy is 90%. I could also pick up the Rock Tomb TM within Union Cave, but in Generation 4 its accuracy is still only 80% and its base power is the same as Rock Throw. I don't really think I need to lower speed either. If I did, I still think Bonsly would be slower than the target because it is unbelievably slow. But it's going to get a little bit faster because at level 17, which I reach when fighting Executive Proton, I can learn the move Mimic, which I put in the place of Fake Tears. When Bonsly has this move on its set and it levels up, then it evolves. And this does still happen even if you teach the move right away once you learn it at level 17. So now it's time to use Sudowoodo. For base stats, it has 70 HP, 100 attack, 115 defense, 30 speed and special attack, and 65 special defense. I kinda wish its special attack didn't change from Bonsly. 10 would be better if we could have 20 more attack. You might think that 100 is enough, and it isn't. Keep that in the back of your mind for later in the video. For now though, Sudowoodo is going to be more than enough. It's time to crush some bugs. Scyther is first. It could of course go for U-turn on turn 1, but why would it do that? It sees my outrageous defense stat and uses Leer to lower it. As a result, Sudowoodo one-shots with Rock Throw, and from there, I easily clean up the following 2 Cocoon Pokemon. So obviously Bugsy was no threat, but the rival could be. He has a Bayleaf, and I also don't have great damage against his initial Ghastly. It's faster than Sudowoodo, so it goes for Curse right away, and that's bad because in Generation 4, this status condition doesn't work the same way it does in Generation 2. In those games, every time you knock out the enemy's Pokemon, you don't take curse damage, but you take curse damage every turn in Generation 4, regardless of if you get the KO or not. This becomes very problematic because Bayleaf is next. It sets up Reflect right away, and then it can use Synthesis to stall me out, a move that it doesn't have access to in Generation 2. Now, I get lucky with Sudowoodo. I get a critical hit here, finishing the Bayleaf, but unfortunately, the curse damage is still too much. One possible strategy here would be to black out and level Sudowoodo up. Maybe I could go up 3 or 4 levels and outspeed the Ghastly with 28 speed, or at least speed tie, giving me a much better chance. But I think there's another way. I'm not 100% convinced that the Ghastly is always going to be using Curse on turn 1, and attempting to fight again right away with a reset is the fastest way to test this hypothesis. And I was right. The Ghastly goes for Mean Look instead, and then Rock Throw one-shots. So now Sudowoodo isn't afflicted by the Curse, and I think this is going to give it a much better chance against the Bayleaf. Still though, turn 1 Reflect, which is bad, then it goes for Synthesis, after that Poison Powder, and this status condition does more damage than it does in Generation 1. It's 1/8 of my total health every turn. The Bayleaf is effective at stalling, so once again I take a loss to the rival. Okay, time to backtrack to the Ruins of Alph. I don't like to do this since it wastes a bunch of time, but I can grab 2 berries here, the Oran Berry and the Pecha Berry. I also pick up the first rare candy during the playthrough, which I could potentially use to go to level 20 over a damage rounding threshold, but that wouldn't be very smart smart since my experience bar is almost full. I just fight a trainer inside of Union Cave that has 1 Onyx. Knocking this one Pokemon out levels Sudowoodo up to 20 over the damage rounding threshold, and then I take on the rival again. Now if you're confused why I'm not using one of the berries that I just picked up, the reason is I don't think it's gonna help that much. I really thought through it as I went back to pick them up, and yes, it would be nice to avoid poison, but then I won't get as much damage with the Hardstone, and I really want to hold on to that damage. These held items are so good in Generation 4. A 20% boost to damage is not something I want to pass up. Maybe I was wrong in that, because once again I get poisoned by the Bayleaf. However, like the first fight against the rival, I crit, and because of that I knock out the Bayleaf. However, I take poison damage and curse damage in a single turn, and guess what? Sudowoodo survives on 1 hit point. Because of this, I get to fight the Zubat, and surprisingly, Sudowoodo is faster with 24 speed against the Bat's 20. Also, it has no priority moves. Rock Throw comes through, not missing, and it one-shots. This was a very lucky win against the rival. I could have been stuck there for so much longer, but now I get to proceed into the forest and upgrade Sudowoodo's moveset. I teach Headbutt in the place of Mimic, because I won't be using this move. Unlike in Generation 1, it's not very good. I do a bunch of Voltorb flip. Unfortunately, Sudowoodo doesn't get access to many of the great TMs. It will have access to Substitute, but I can't learn Swords Dance, which is a big bummer, especially for the late game. I should also go through Sudowoodo's improved move pool at this point in the run. You can see that I get Wood Hammer as a move reminder move. I don't learn it at the start of the playthrough, so I'm going to have to use a Heart Scale after I get access to Surf and Blackthorn City in order to learn that move. Sudowoodo also additionally gets access to Hammer Arm at level 49. This is a base 100 power fighting type move with 90% accuracy. The only downside is that it lowers your Pokemon's speed. I thought this could be pretty useful with Sudowoodo since I'm already going to be moving second against most targets, and then once I get access to Rock Polish, I'll be able to set up my speed and likely still move first even as I use some Hammer Arms. Beyond that, Sudowoodo gets access to a lot more TMs that Bonsly didn't have access to. For example, Earthquake and Stone Edge. The former of these is available in Victory Road, and the latter is unfortunately walled off with BP again in the Battle Frontier, just like Brick Break. Also, I'm going to have to learn Rock Slide through level up at 33, because the TM for Rock Slide is only available once you beat Brock all the way in Kanto. North of Goldenrod City, let's talk about optional trainers in Johto playthroughs. It generally doesn't make a lot of sense to fight a lot of them, because they give such poor experience yields due to their Pokemon being at ridiculous levels. And by ridiculous, I mean to say their levels are all really low. They give like no experience. It is so frustrating. Throughout my time playing a lot of Crystal version, what I have found with some Pokemon that are really weak is it makes sense to rush all the way to the Elite Four and then grind on them for better yields. With Sudowoodo, this was my strategy. I think rushing to the Elite Four probably makes the most sense since the Johtonian gym leaders are not really that strong. If I can then somehow beat the Elite Four, I can make it all the way through Kanto and those terrible gym leaders gaining much more experience. This will give me access to grinding against the League rematches, and all their Pokemon are at higher levels. This will accelerate Sudowoodo's training, and I'm never going to get bogged down by the quagmire that is Johto. At least, that's my theory. I still want to play fairly safe and pick up some extra items along the way, like the Quick Claw. I assume this is going to be a really good item for this run. In the National Park, I also pick up Dig, because in Generation 4, it's much better than it was in Generation 3 and 2. It now has a base power of 80, which I think is the sweet spot for this move, and Game Freak clearly agrees, since that's how this move still functions to this day. I teach it in the place of Flail, and then I head back to the Goldenrod City gym to face Whitney. Clefairy is first. Sudowoodo only has direct damage dealing moves, so there isn't much nuance to this fight. Clefairy takes the most damage from Rock Throw, so I go for it, but I could have also used Headbutt since I am faster and I could have potentially flinched. In the end though, it doesn't really matter. Whitney uses a Super Potion here to heal the Clefairy, and just so Rock Throw doesn't miss as I use it repeatedly, I instead choose Headbutt to two-shot her lead. Okay, Miltank time. This Pokemon is fairly heavy, so now Low Kick has an effective power of 160 against it. This is clearly the best option, and Miltank has no idea what it should be doing. I think Attract into Rollout would give it the best possible chance to knock Sudowoodo out, but it's just going for Stomp over and over again. I guess it could flinch, but it doesn't, and low kick easily 2-shots. The prize for this battle is truly a prize. It's the Attract TM. This is, I think, the best TM in all of HeartGold. So many Pokemon in these runs are going to rely on it in order to beat Red. A lot of people ask the question, like, can a Pokemon like Spinarak beat Red? I'm pretty sure it can if it can learn Attract. And yes, Spinarak can learn Attract, so I'm pretty sure it can beat Red, although it might require astronomical odds. Relying on this move is just something that I really don't want to do. I would prefer to rely on moves like Return, and I pick that up in the department store before I leave Goldenrod City. I battle Sudowoodo, I knock this out for experience. That levels my Sudowoodo up to 25, where it can learn Feint Attack, a move which is now physical. I want this for super effective damage against Morty's Pokemon. Remember, the Ghastly line has Levitate in this game. I'm not going to be able to rely on Dig against them. I think the move that makes most sense to give up right now is Headbutt, since it doesn't give me a type effectiveness advantage against any Pokemon. Low Kick will be useful against Jasmine's Steelix. Rock Throw is my same type attack bonus move, and it's going to be pretty good against Price if for some reason I don't have Rock Slide by that point. And of course, Dig is super effective against annoying Pokemon like Magnemite. In a pinch, I could rely on Low Kick against Magnemites, but its effective power is only 40, and Rock Throws is 37, so I still think holding on to Dig makes the most sense. Next is the rival in Burned Tower. This fight is really problematic for Sudowoodo. I'm not faster than the Ghastly. It can use Confuse Ray or Curse on turn 1. I'm gonna go for Feint Attack against it, which can do a lot of damage, but by the time I've been hit by 2 status conditions, this fight has essentially already fallen apart. Bayleaf once again has Reflect, so it can shrug off hits from Sudowoodo like they're nothing and knock me out with Magical Leaf. Or it can just wait until curse damage finishes me. I go into the fight for a second time, and what I'm hoping is that the Ghastly is just not going to use Curse or Confuse Ray. Maybe it will set up Mean Look. No, it doesn't. It goes for Confuse Ray and then Curse immediately after, and Sudowoodo hits itself. So maybe I can hope for Mean Look or Confuse Ray and then Sudowoodo doesn't hit itself. Or I can equip the Quick Claw and then get this activation, which will allow me to outspeed the Ghastly and knock it out in one turn with Feint Attack, dodging both status conditions. This feels really good. However, then Bayleaf comes in and ruins all of my hopes, plus Rock Throw misses, it sets up Reflect, and from there, it just goes for Magical Leaf, getting a critical hit, doing massive damage to Sudowoodo. I was trying to use Dig to stall out the Reflect counter, but now that it crit, this isn't gonna work, so I take a third loss against the rival. Okay, this is the first extreme wall for Sudowoodo. I guess I should have expected it after how Rival 2 went. I needed a lot of luck to get through that battle. I'm not going to try to chance things here over and over again and waste a bunch of time. Instead, I'm going to the Lighthouse next to continue my training. Fighting a bunch of people in here doesn't really give Sudowoodo that much experience. By the time I'm done, I'm around level 27, nearing level 28, so I backtrack through Route 39 and 38, fighting some trainers along the way to get to level 28 over a damage rounding threshold before I return to the rival. I am still not naturally faster than the Ghastly, but the Quick Claw activates and I one-shot it once again. Bayleaf comes in. I am now faster than this Pokemon though by 1 speed. This allows me to move first, avoiding Reflect, doing half damage with Rock Throw. I also get lucky here. Instead of it choosing Reflect, it goes for Poison Powder, allowing me to 2-shot his ace. This is a far better scenario. I'm glad I held on to Dig because now I can one-shot the following Magnemite. Zubat comes in. It's still slower than Sudowoodo, which feels really wrong. Anyway, I knock it out with Rock Throw, and with that, the rival's defeated. Inside the Ecruteak City Gym, I level up to 30, and I have a chance to learn Brock Tomb. No, I hate this move. I'm keeping Rock Throw. Now, time to face Morty. Okay, big problems in this fight. All of Morty's Pokemon outspeed Sudowoodo. Also, Ghastly number 1 can either use Curse and inflict a status condition, or it can use Lick and get Paralysis, which is really awful right at the start of the fight. Morty sends in Gengar second. Shadow Ball is now special, so it's using Gengar's higher special attack stat, and Sudowoodo's worst defensive stat, so this move is doing a lot of damage despite being neutral. After missing an attack due to Paralysis, Gengar gets a critical hit with Shadow Ball, and that's that. One loss here. I try again. I make it by the Gengar this time with red health, but that means I have another problem. There are 2 Haunter left, and the final of them has Nightshade, plus it's faster. Since it's level 23, it's always going to do enough damage. Sudowoodo has 22 hit points, and the Haunter does go for the Ghost type move, knocking me out. 2 losses. Going into the next fight, you'll see that my Sudowoodo is level 33. This is because I used 3 rare candies to get access to Rock Slide before trying this fight again. My thought process was fairly simple. If I get Rock Polish, the late game shouldn't be that bad, right? Sudowoodo has base 100 attack. That is more than enough. So smoothing out this little bump here at Morty is probably the better use of the rare candies. Here's the thing though, Rock Slide doesn't really help for this fight in any meaningful way. I guess I could flinch if I get a Quick Claw activation, but that's relying on a lot of luck. And Feint Attack is super effective, and it has a slightly higher effective power at 120 versus Rock Slide's 112. I could change this math with the Hardstone, but I don't want to do that because I do think the Quick Claw is the better held item here. After knocking out the Ghastly, the Gengar goes for Hypnosis. Sudowoodo's sleeping, it hits Shadow Ball. Sudowoodo continues sleeping, but then it wakes up. Quick Claw activates, I hit with Feint Attack, it does massive damage, and Gengar faints. Okay, I have green health left over for the 2 Haunters. I think this is going to be a win. The Quick Claw activates again, I knock out the first Haunter, the final one comes in, and with only damage from Nightshade or Sucker Punch, it's just not going to do enough. I crit Morty's final team member for good measure, and with that I've earned myself the 4th badge, and the potential for deep regrets in the late game. Okay, I have to make a decision now. Do I want to fight Chuck next or Price? Obviously I have a type advantage against Price, and I have a type disadvantage to Chuck. That said, beating Chuck earlier gives me access to Fly, and that'll greatly improve my rate of progress throughout the mid-game. I decided to go for him since I think Sudowoodo can pull it off. After all, he only has 2 Pokemon. On my way to his gym, I clear out trainers along the southeastern portion of the sea. This is because I want to come back here later to pick up 2 rare candies, and having the experience now is just going to help against Chuck. He leads with Primeape. I go for Dig, and it's able to 2-shot. However, I take massive damage from Focus Punch, and that leaves Sudowoodo with only 12 hit points left over for the Poliwrath, which is faster. It goes for Hypnosis. Sudowoodo falls asleep, but I wake up right away and use Dig, which is great, although this move is only doing about 1/3 to the Poliwrath, and it doesn't even look like that after the second hit. I think it's going to take 4 turns to knock out his ace. I switch up my moveset, teaching Return in the place of Feint Attack. I also equip the Silk Scarf. Now I can do maximum damage per turn without requiring the extra turn of Dig. I'm just hoping this gives me a 3-shot on his ace. And it would, but Chuck has a Hyper Potion. Actually, he has multiple Hyper Potions, and then he eventually hits a Hypnosis and Sudowoodo once again loses. Alright, this is not going well. It took me 2 more losses to figure out that fighting Chuck right now doesn't make a lot of sense. Instead, I'm going to be heading towards Mahogany Town. You could say that my arrogance and overconfidence here made me pay a high price. Actually, I'm not going to fight him next. What if we fight Jasmine, since I have Dig and Low Kick, which are very good against her entire team? The Magnemites are obviously a one-shot. I tried Dig against the Steelix, and no, this is not doing very much damage. I tried Low Kick, and it's also not doing very much, and Steelix is doing a lot every time it hits with Iron Tail. This is one of the most inaccurate moves in all of Pokemon. Sometimes it feels like Dynamic Punch, but it's still hitting enough to knock Sudowoodo out. After all, she has healing items. I tried one more time, hoping to get lucky, but Jasmine beats me for a second time. Sudowoodo is starting to feel kind of bad. I'm getting flashbacks to my Platinum playthrough. Alright, I guess we're going to Mahogany Town, and Price is going to be the next gym leader we beat. The red Gyarados isn't really a threat since I have Rock Slide, and that's super effective. Also, it just uses Twister against me. What a terrible move. The Rocket plotline is boring and uneventful as usual. Then I head into the Ice Gym to finally face Price. Okay, Price is one of the worst gym leaders in Johto. Sudowoodo is not going to struggle here. Well, kind of. It isn't able to one-shot the Seal when using Rock Slide. I guess that's what happens when the Ice-type specialist leads with a Water-type Pokemon. I level up, say no to Sucker Punch, and then Piloswine comes in. In this case, Low Kick is my best move against it. I go for it, it does more than half. Piloswine uses Hail, and then I knock it out essentially for free. Dugong's last. I go for Rock Slide for maximum damage. I wasn't afraid of missing, and in this case, I do enough to knock out his final Pokemon in a single hit. Alright, finally another easy gym leader. With him defeated, I'm gonna have to go back to one of the 2 hard people though. Since I don't have Fly, I can't head back and fight Chuck right away, and I think it makes sense to stop by Jasmine and see if she's possible right now. Against the Steelix, turn 1, I go for Dig to do slightly less damage. I'm hoping that if I use Low Kick, I'll trigger her Citrus Berry and then use Low Kick one more time and knock the Steelix out. And this plan does end up working. I clean up the final Magnemite and earn myself the 6th badge. Alright, fighting Price first was so much better. I make it back to Chuck. In this case, he goes for double team on the Primeape, but Return now has enough damage to one-shot his lead. That means I should two-shot the Poliwrath. And strangely, instead of using Hypnosis, Surf, or Focus Punch, it goes for Body Slam. What's going on there, Chuck? That makes absolutely no sense. Return does more than half. It heals with the Citrus Berry. I'm not able to knock it out on the next turn, so he does end up using a Hyper Potion. But now he doesn't have a Citrus Berry, so I'm going to two-hit, unless Sudowoodo crits. With that luck, I have cleaned up the mid-game portion of Johto at great cost. It took me way longer than I was hoping for. And now the next gym leader is Claire, who leads with a Gyarados and has a Kingdra which knows Hydro Pump. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be so much fun. Before that though, we have another thrilling section of the game, the Radio Tower plotline with the Rockets, which are all just really bad. Well, except Petrol, who has a ton of coughing and one wheezing. He ends up being a problem because the wheezing comes in second, lowers my accuracy, which is bad for Rock Slide, and then it poisons me. Because of the status condition, Sudowoodo ends up losing. I could have had a little bit of foresight about this and given the Pecha Berry before starting this battle. I think that would have been the better play. Anyway, he doesn't poison me in the second battle, and because of that I pull through with a win since Return is one-shotting all of the coughing. Alright, time to fight the rival again. Up until now he has been really brutal, but this is by far the most difficult of the fights against him. Golbat's first, it can use Confuse Ray or flinch me with Astonish or Bite. If I knock it out, then he sends in Meganium. Return is doing 1/3 to it after it sets up Reflect, which is just not good. I go for Rock Slide in the hopes that I'll flinch it, but I don't, and it hits with Petal Dance, bringing Sudowoodo under half health. Now, this is where things get awful. Haunter's next, and it's faster of course because ghosts are fast. In this case, it goes for Curse, afflicting the status condition on Sudowoodo, and there are two more Pokemon I need to knock out, Sneasel and then Magnemite. The last of these is a problem because I was going to use Dig against it, but that takes 2 turns, and if I have a Curse, then I won't be able to knock it out without fainting. And in this battle, I don't even make it to the Magnemite. So here's a montage. Meganium defeats Sudowoodo. Meganium defeats Sudowoodo again because it can effectively stall, Reflect, Poison Powder, and Synthesis. I lose to the Meganium for a 3rd time, a 4th time, and then on the 5th time around I do make it by it, but the Haunter just gets me because I'm at such low health. It can just use Shadow Ball and knock me out without ever having to go for Curse. You will have noticed that my moveset has changed up. I've taught Substitute in the place of Low Kick. I can use this move in order to block Curse, although I have to set it up on the Golbat, which isn't ideal because then the Meganium is going to break my defense before the Haunter comes in. I could potentially get a Quick Claw activation on the Ghost, which would allow me to block Curse before it uses it. Or I could potentially flinch the Meganium over and over again. In this case, that doesn't work out for me, and I don't have a Substitute set up by the time the Haunter comes in, but I do have green health, which is pretty good. Then I get lucky, not with the Quick Claw, but because Haunter chooses Mean Look, and the rival just gives me the victory. I set up Substitute, then it can't use Curse, Rock Slide one-shots, and I can clean up the Sneasel and the Magnemite at the end of the battle. Remember back north of Goldenrod City where I said it was okay to not train in Johto playthroughs and just try to get to the Elite Four as soon as possible? In retrospect, maybe I should have trained a little bit more, and I definitely should have fought Price first. Luckily, the next little section of the game is very easy. When fighting Rocket Grunts, I level up and I'm able to learn Double Edge in the place of Return. This is the better move since Sudowoodo has Rock Head and it won't take any recoil damage. Actually, that makes Double Edge my best go-to move if I'm not using the Hard Stone, and I am definitely going to continue using the Quick Claw. Archer at the top of the radio tower is not a threat, but this random person inside of Claire's gym ends up being terrifying. Her Seadra survives one hit from Double Edge, and it goes for Bubble Beam twice, bringing Sudowoodo down to low health. Okay, Kingdra is going to be absolutely brutal. I guess it's time for Claire. Gyarados is first, hitting me with Intimidate so that I have a lowered attack stat throughout the remainder of this battle. That's unfortunate, Rock Slide cannot one-shot her lead anymore. She uses a Hyper Potion, delaying my victory. Luckily the Gyarados only gets 1 attack in before I knock it out. The experience here levels Sudowoodo up to 49 where it can learn Hammer Arm. I decided to put this move in the place of Dig before proceeding. She sends in her ace Kingdra next. This is awful. I think unless I get a flinch, I'm not going to win here. And it's even worse than that, because Hydro Pump just immediately one-shots Sudowoodo, so I would need a flinch after a Quick Claw activation. Right now, this is not going to be possible, so I guess I have to resort to fighting Johtonian trainers. The people south of Blackthorn City are alright for experience yields, but they're kind of tricky to get to because of this weaving path and a bunch of ledges. Fighting some of them brings Sudowoodo up to level 50. I go to the Whirl Islands and pick up one one more rare candy, and then I head back to Claire. I tried this at level 50, but no, I think we already know that this is obviously just not gonna work. I go south of Violet City, pick up the heart scale so that I can use the move reminder in case I want to teach Woodhammer. I fought a few more trainers going up to level 51, and then I head back to Claire. I decided to use 4 more rare candies here, boosting Sudowoodo up to level 55. This is critical for a couple reasons against Claire. It gives me better damage ranges and hopefully a one-shot on the Gyarados after Intimidate, but it also puts my HP over 160, meaning Gyarados cannot knock out a single substitute when it goes for Dragon Rage. This gives me a major benefit against the Kingdra because it can survive one hit from Hydro Pump and potentially get a Quick Claw activation to hit 2 Rock Slides in a row. The downside is I don't have enough damage to two-shot the Kingdra. It still has green health after a single Rock Slide, and then Hydro Pump finishes Sudowoodo. Remember when I said it would be nice to have 20 more points in my physical attack? Yeah, this is one of those cases. I don't want to do more training because it's going to waste so much time. This is a Johto game again. I've belabored that point so much throughout this video. But having more damage really is the problem here for Sudowoodo. I also don't think it makes a lot of sense to get that damage by using the Hard Stone because then I give up the advantage of the Quick Claw. And then I'm going to rely on the Kingdra missing a single time with Hydro Pump in order to attack it twice. Right now I have the advantage of both the miss or the Quick Claw activation. There is another way though. I don't have to use Rock Slide. I can use Double Edge, one of the moves that I always like to avoid using on this channel. It does do more damage, but still not enough to two-shot. Although, Kingdra misses Hydro Pump here, which gives me enough to knock it out. I have half health for the remaining 2 Dragonairs. This is looking pretty good. I go for Double Edge, but Dragonair survives. It uses Thunder Wave, because I'm not a ground type, which always frustrated me when I was a kid. Mono Rock types just didn't make sense to me because I played so much Generation 1. Anyway, now I'm paralyzed. Things are going bad. She heals her Dragonair. It's using Aqua Tail, doing decent damage, and Sudowoodo has 22 hit points left for the final one. It's going for Dragon Pulse, which does enough damage and Sudowoodo faints. So even when I get lucky against the Kingdra and 3-shot after a healing item, I can't win. That's not actually true. I just played badly in that last fight. There is a way that I can do this. I lose to the Kingdra once, and then I make it back to it where it misses a bunch of Hydro Pumps, and because of this, I knock it out again. Instead, against the Dragonair at level 55, I have one more advantage. I have a nice speed stat, 2 points higher than Dragonair's 67. Because of that, I can set up Substitute before it goes for Thunder Wave, blocking the status condition, and then I can knock it out without getting paralyzed. With my defense intact, I'm able to finish off her final Dragonair and finally defeat Claire. I'm sure that some of you, when you sat down to watch this video, were like, this is gonna be awful. I was optimistic, but my optimism was kind of shattered by this point in the run. Sudowoodo luckily has an easy time against the Kimono Girls. I beat every single one of them on my first attempt. I knock out Ho-Oh just for fun and a little bit more experience. And then, with my confidence shattered, on my way to Victory Road, I fight a bunch of optional trainers. I have put off a lot of training. These people give decent experience yields, and the rival is right around the corner again. I need to be preparing. The problem is, the medium fast growth rate just really isn't leveling up quickly yet. I get to 59 before I fight him, so hopefully this is going to be enough. Sneasel's first. I knock it out in a single hit with Rock Slide, and then he sends in his Meganium, as expected. It goes for Poison Powder. Double Edge does more than half because he didn't set up with Reflect, which is great. But then he hits with Petal Dance, doing massive damage, and because of the status condition, I'm just not going to survive. I haven't taught Earthquake by this point because I still thought the Magneton would be a one-shot with Hammer Arm. I'm just going to rely on that move. In this case, I can set up Substitute against the Sneasel since it's pretty incompetent. He switches out the Sneasel, sending in Magneton next. But since I have a Substitute to block its Thunder Wave, I have nothing to fear against it. That's another reason why Earthquake just isn't required for this battle. Plus, it can't hit the Haunter, which is going to be annoying with its Levitate as always. I get lucky on the Meganium with a critical hit, knocking it out in a single turn. Then I have my Substitute in place for the Haunter, so I'm not afraid of it. I'm able to block Confuse Ray, one-shot with Rock Slide, and from there the rest of his team is simple. Way too many of these rival fights have just ended with good luck for me. Still, a win is a win. Let's head into the Elite Four. Will has the potential to be problematic for Sudowoodo because some of his Pokemon are quite fast. The two Xatu and the Jinx outspeed, but Sudowoodo is faster than the Executor and the Slowbro. Optimistically, I have super effective damage against all of the Pokemon that are faster. Xatu just goes for me first, using Rock Slide, doing almost no damage, and then I one-shot it. Next, Slowbro comes in. I get lucky here, Double Edge scores a critical hit, and Slowbro faints to a single hit. Alright, pretty good. Jinx is next. It moves first with Lovely Kiss, putting Sudowoodo Sudowoodo to sleep, and then it snoozes for a long time while Jinx uses Psychic, and that's my first loss during the league. I tried the fight again, setting up Substitute against the Slowbro and then knocking it out, but this doesn't work because it can break my Substitute using its Psychic, so I still don't have my defense in place for the Jinx. However, I'm gambling now. I'm hoping that Substitute will activate with the Quick Claw, allowing me to block Lovely Kiss on turn 1, and that is exactly what happens. Nice. Rock Slide easily gets a one-shot, but he did use U-turn, so I still have to make it through the 2 remaining Xatu. The issue is that Sudowoodo lost its Substitute on the Jinx, and its health is pretty low. Even though Xatu's using me first, the chip damage is stacking up, and I still have to make it through an Executor and another Xatu, which is just not going to happen. The Executor is easily able to survive one hit from Double Edge, it uses Psychic, and that's another loss. If I don't get lucky against the Jinx, then Lovely Kiss finishes me, so that's a 3rd loss against Will. Things are really not going well. At this point, you might be wondering, where is the Rock Polish TM? Well, unfortunately for me, it is gated off in Kanto. It's just north of Lavender Town. So my approach here is either luck out or do more leveling. And right now, grinding doesn't make a lot of sense. I guess I could Blackout train against Will, defeating 3 or 4 Pokemon every time, then coming back in with a little bit more experience. I didn't want to do that, plus I get lucky right away. Substitute on the Xatu, it doesn't break it because it uses U-turn. Then Rock Slide crits the Slowbro one-shotting. After that he sends in his Xatu again. It just goes for me first. I avoid Rock Slide and knock it out, taking no damage. My Substitute is still in place for the Jinx. While it does go for Psychic, breaking my defense, I knock it out in a single turn. And now I have green health for the Executor and the final Xatu. The bulky Grass type just sets up with Reflect, but Double Edge is still doing enough damage to 2-shot. I've made it to the Xatu, I have super effective damage with Rock Slide, and that's enough for me to scrape out a win against Will. Koga is luckily so much easier. He's got a bunch of bug Pokemon which I can finish off fairly quickly with the Rock Slide. Even the Fortress only takes 2 turns to knock out. While I haven't taught Earthquake to my Sudowoodo, I'm still able to 2-shot the Muck using Double Edge, and then once again Rock Slide is super effective against his final Pokemon, Crobat. Okay, Bruno does not start well. He has a Hitmontop. It does no counter. I attack directly into it with a Double Edge. This doesn't do enough damage, just barely, and then counter reflects so much back at Sudowoodo one-shotting. It is very rare to see Hitmontop doing that amount of damage, especially after coming from Generation 2. In that game, it essentially does no damage every turn. Okay, there's one potential solution here. My Sudowoodo is naturally faster than the Hitmontop. I can use the Silk Scarf to increase the damage of Double Edge, ensuring that I one-shot and I can't be hit by counter. This also helps give me more damage against the following Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, both of which are one-hits, but the Machamp on the other hand is not. I barely miss it, it eats a Citrus Berry, then uses Cross Chop, but this doesn't crit or do enough damage. Sudowoodo survives, knocks out his ace, and moves on to his final Pokemon, Onix. I'm going to be using Hammer Arm here. I do take damage, which is super effective from Earthquake. Luckily, the Onix is pretty bad, and it's just not doing enough damage. Bruno tries to save it with a bunch of healing items, but in the end it's not enough, and I pull through with a win. Time for Karen. This ends up being quite annoying. I'm going to set up Substitute on the first Pokemon, Umbreon, then I use Hammer Arm, and surprisingly it one-shots. I'm used to this thing surviving pretty much everything. Vileplume's using Stun Spore against my Substitute. This is ineffective of course, and I one-shot. Then Gengar comes in. It goes for Focus Blast. I miss my Rock Slide, which is so annoying, and then Gengar uses Spite, draining the rest of Rock Slide's PP. The only other 2 moves I have are Hammer Arm and Double Edge, so I lost because I can't attack the Ghost Pokemon. Now I probably should have used a PP restoring item to get a little bit more uses of Rock Slide. I went into the battle without doing that, trying to save some time, hoping that my Substitute would hold and I wouldn't miss against the Gengar. This time I don't. It actually misses its Focus Blast, because that move is pretty inaccurate. From there, I can easily finish off the Houndoom and the Murkrow and make my way to Lance. I was expecting Sudowoodo to do fairly well here because Lance is essentially a flying type specialist. However, I was proven very wrong. This fight is absolutely brutal. First of all, let's compare speed stats. Sudowoodo is slower than every single one of Lance's Pokemon. Even the Gyarados, which has 93 speed, and the final Dragonite, which is actually his slowest Pokemon with only 90 speed. But Sudowoodo right now only has 80. What this means is I'm going to be hit by the Gyarados' Waterfall at at least twice because I am not able to one-shot it using Rock Slide. Lance is also using a full restore here, so I should probably use Double Edge on turn 1 to avoid the healing item. The second Pokemon he sends in is his first Dragonite. It's going for Dragon Rush, which isn't doing that much damage, but all of this will stack up. I have no way to heal, so eventually I take too much damage, and after I take out his third Pokemon, the fourth Pokemon, Dragonite again, knocks Sudowoodo out using Blizzard. I tried using the Shell Bell. Yeah, it doesn't work. I tried going back to the Quick Claw, using Rest instead to heal on the Dragonite. This also is not going well because Dragon Rush is doing a lot of damage. In this case, because one of them got a critical hit. I felt like this was my best option, running the Quick Claw with Rest so that I can heal later in the fight and hopefully Lance won't crit. I took one fast reset because Rock Slide is inaccurate and it's missing against Gyarados. Then I make it back to the Dragonite. This time though it crits again with Dragon Rush, so that's another reset. I have 2 more miss-induced losses to the Gyarados before I finally get to knock it out. From there, things don't really get easier though, because the final Dragonite is using Outrage over and over again. This move is doing a lot of damage, and I have to heal a bunch using Rest. This isn't really a healing loop though, because the Dragonite will eventually hit itself with Confusion that's inflicted from Outrage, and that'll give me an opportunity to attack. At least I hope so, and I'm really praying that that's going to play out before this Dragonite gets a critical hit. And it does. From there, things get a bit easier. The next Dragonite has Dragon Rush and Blizzard. It can miss. I'm stuck healing here again, wasting a bunch of time, but once I clear it, both the Charizard and the Aerodactyl are pretty incompetent against Sudowoodo. I failed this fight a total of 7 times before I finally got the luck I needed to win. At this point, I was starting to get very worried about what was waiting for me in the second battle against Lance, because his team gets so much better for that fight. For now though, we get to do the victory lap in Kanto. I'm sure this is going to be a bunch of easy battles against incompetent gym leaders. The first of them is Lieutenant Surge. I haven't taught Earthquake by this point. I didn't really think I needed it here. I got paralyzed, had to use Rest, but in the end, this fight is straightforward as I was expecting. Next, I tried Sabrina, and this fight is not straightforward. Sudowoodo is unable to one-shot the Espeon at the beginning of the battle, which went for Calm Mind on turn 1. Then Sabrina uses a full restore, and Espeon uses Psychic following that, doing more than half to Sudowoodo. Alakazam comes in next. Of course, it's way faster. It goes for Psychic, and that's a reset to a Cantonian gym leader. Uh-oh, I hope this isn't gonna be a trend. So I'm trying to fight Misty now, and yeah, the Golduck is actually brutal. It's doing so much damage. Sudowoodo is faster than the Quagsire and the Lapras, but not the Starmie. I'm lucky her final Pokemon doesn't have a move like Surf, instead having Water Pulse, but that doesn't even matter because I can't one-shot the Quagsire. I went for Hammer Arm. This wouldn't have mattered. Double Edge would have done more, but I still would have had to 2-hit, and Quagsire knocks out Sudowoodo. Okay, so my speed stat is becoming a problem. Let's head north of Lavender Town, push this boulder out of the way, and finally, at long last, pick up the Rock Polish TM. I didn't want to fight Misty right away, so instead I went to Erica's gym. I have no idea what I was thinking, by the way. Navigating this location is always so frustrating. It takes me forever to get through this little maze. And upon completing the maze, there is no convenient way to get back to the door. I tried fighting Erica, and she completely thrashed Sudowoodo twice. I guess I have to backtrack all the way through the maze and fight a different gym leader. I end up back at Misty, trying to fight her again. I'm holding the Silk Scarf to improve my damage with Double Edge, but I am still two-shotting the Golduck. Quagsire is next. This time though, it doesn't attack with Water Pulse. Instead, it sets up Rain Dance. This is going to make the Starmie hit much harder, but hopefully I can one-shot the Lapras using Rock Slide before that happens. And Sudowoodo pulls it off. So will Starmie do enough damage to one-shot? Well, it goes for Confuse Ray instead, giving me a chance to attack with Double Edge because Sudowoodo doesn't hit itself in confusion. Alright, now it's going to go for Water Pulse. This does a lot of damage, but not enough to KO, so Sudowoodo gets a chance to attack again. Confusion doesn't mess me up, and with that, I defeat Misty. Alright, this Pokemon is so bad. I really don't enjoy solo running with it. It is a Pokemon that is so bad at this format that it struggles against the Cantonian gym leaders. Like, I am having to luck through this battle against Misty. I could have made this fight more consistent if I switched off the Silk Scarf and instead ran a Person Berry to counter out Confusion. Next, I went back to the power plant. While I was doing this, I was looking at Sudowoodo's move pool, and I realized something a little bit strange. Why does it learn Calm Mind? This is so strange. I guess you can use it to boost your special defense, which could be useful against water and grass type Pokemon, but boosting your special attack makes very little sense unless you're running Hidden Power, because that is the only special move Sudowoodo Sudowoodo can learn. Well, unless you use some move tutors, for example, Sudowoodo can learn Earth Power, Mud Slap, and Snore through tutors, so those could potentially combo with Calm Mind, but overall it makes far more sense to play this Pokemon as a physical attacker. By the way, Calm Mind isn't available to me during these playthroughs because I have to purchase it with BP at the Battle Frontier. I was really curious though if there are any competitive sets that ran Calm Mind with Sudowoodo, and unfortunately there aren't. Let me know though if you've had any experience with a Calm Mind using Sudowoodo. I'm sure that would be an interesting story at very least. Next, I went back to fight Sabrina. I'm able to one-shot the Espeon now, and then two-shot the following Alakazam. He uses Energy Ball, doing just less than half, and then I knock it out. Mr. Mime is last, and normally I would say it isn't much of a threat, but in this case it actually is. It does decent damage to me with Psychic. Sudowoodo only has orange health left over by the time it finishes off Sabrina's final Pokemon. These battles are just not going as well as I want them to. I do have access to the leftovers now. I catch the Snorlax with the Master Ball, but I don't immediately use it. I just leave the Silk Scarf on because I'm being a little bit lazy for Brock. This does not end up well. While I can Hammer Arm his Pokemon for super effective damage, both the Omastar and the Kabutops have water moves, and the Omastar eventually knocks out Sudowoodo using Brine 2 turns in a row. I tried again stubbornly not using Earthquake, and it's just not going to work, so instead of teaching the move, I just decided not to fight Brock anymore. Let's do something else first, like fighting the trainers in his gym, as well as this bug catcher south of Pewter City. I'm getting worried about my final level. Also, the reason I'm not giving up Hammer Arm is because I kind of want to hold on to it for Red's Snorlax. I really want super effective damage against it, because unlike in Generation 2 where it only has physical moves, in this game it does know Blizzard. Luckily, Blaine is very easy because I don't have to worry about Flame Body since Rock Slide is not making contact. Inside Seafoam Islands, I'm going to go through the entire cave portion fighting some optional trainers so that I can pick up the rare candy. On my way, I had a little bit of fun knocking out Articuno. Janine is of course very easy, and that brings me back to Brock. I tried again with Hammer Arm, and once again, the Omastar gets me using Brine. It was at this point that I was pretty fed up losing here, so I taught Earthquake in the place of Double Edge, and then I'm able to stomp his team fairly easily. Still, the Omastar causes some problems, but I'm at least able to win. Okay, so 2 gym leaders left, Erica or Blue. I figured Erica would be the easier choice, but I end up being wrong. She's actually absolutely brutal. The reason is the jump off at the beginning of the battle is quite fast. It has 129 speed, so Sudowoodo is not moving first. This allows it to set up Sunny Day, and every single Pokemon on her team has Chlorophyll, boosting their speed once the sun is out. Then the Tangela can put me to sleep, the Blossom can go for Giga Drain or a 1-turn Solar Beam, and the Victory Bell can use Leaf Storm, dealing devastating amounts of damage. After losing twice here, I realized that I need a way to play around her fast Pokemon, so it is time to teach Rock Polish. Deciding which move to give up was tricky. In the end, I opted for giving up Earthquake since it doesn't offer very much against Red. It's super effective against Pikachu, but nothing else, and the Pikachu is weak defensively. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to knock it out with one hit from Rock Slide. Setting up on turn 1 boosts my speed by 2 stages up to 184. This looks like I'm faster than all of her Pokemon, but if the sun is on the field, that won't be true. Plus, Rock Slide is doing underwhelming amounts of damage. I get a critical hit finishing off the Blossom. She sends in Jumpluff, which I quickly dispatch, and then Victory Bell comes in, surviving a hit from Rock Slide. I got lucky here, she's caught in a healing loop, and I am able to finish it off. However, I didn't like the fact that I had given up Earthquake. I think I want the move back. The only way to do that is to reset because there's only a single Earthquake TM in this game. So I have to go back and fight Erica again after teaching Rock Polish in the place of Hammer Arm. Fighting her again does not go well. I got lucky last time. I lose 4 more times, and then I decided that I didn't want to fight her anymore. Now, unlike in Generation 2, I don't have a choice. I can't fight Blue until all of the Cantonian gym leaders are defeated. So in order to progress, I have to face Erica, but I'm not able to do it at the current level. So instead, I head back to the Elite Four to do a bunch of training. Since I haven't beat Blue yet, they don't have their upgraded teams, which I think is a benefit for Sudowoodo because it's actually able to defeat a lot of them. Although I will be blacking out here, I don't want to use my PP restoring items because I'm going to be holding on to those for the league rematches. I incur a total of 2 blackouts, leveling Sudowoodo up over a damage rounding threshold to 75 before I make my way back to Erica. This fight I win with luck. I flinch the Victory Bell so it's not able to use Leaf Storm, and then I have her caught in a healing loop. I can use Earthquake to 2-shot it, so I'm finally able to defeat her and move on to Blue. Okay, Kanto has been really rough. and it's not going to get better. His first Pokemon is Exeggutor, which puts me in a bit of a weird position. It's slower than Sudowoodo, and it likes to use Trick Room. If I set up with Rock Polish to outspeed his other faster Pokemon later in the fight, then I'm still going to be slower than all of them because it sets up Trick Room, so there is essentially no way to outspeed here, at least at the beginning of the battle. And that's very bad because the Exeggutor has Leaf Storm, which does almost enough to one-shot. Maybe you're thinking, just attack twice, flinch the Exeggutor and knock it out. That'll make everything easier. Well, not really, because the Machamp that follows, which I'm likely not going to be able to one-shot, knows Dynamic Punch. And it has no guard, so it will never miss with this move. That means Sudowoodo is going to get confused, even if I get very lucky against the Exeggutor. And in this case, I didn't. I just go for rest, but I can't heal fast enough. I tried one more time, but I missed Rock Slide on the Exeggutor, and I don't think I'm going to win, so let's head back to the Elite Four and grind up to a higher level. This brings Sudowoodo up to level 84, and from there I use rare candies because we're getting close to the max level. I really wish that I hadn't used them earlier in the playthrough against Morty and Claire. I think I would have saved a lot of time just doing a little bit more training in Johto. It would have reduced resets overall throughout the playthrough and maybe made this whole experience just a little bit more fun. In general, my advice to you would be, if you're trying to have the most fun doing a solo challenge, just do some extra training. You're going to make all of the battles easier. If you're trying to get the best time, then do more of what I'm trying to do here, which is putting off your training as long as possible. I think I need to get better at anticipating which Pokemon are just going to be absolutely awful. I should have known. Anyways, at level 91, I can one-shot the Exeggutor with a critical hit from Rock Slide. Yay! Completely consistent. I'm not able to one-shot the Machamp though. It just barely survives and lands a Dynamic Punch, confusing Sudowoodo. Luckily, the status condition doesn't mess me up. From there, I one-shot the Rhydon. Gyarados is next. It has Intimidate. Luckily, I have super effective damage against the 3 remaining Pokemon. Rock Slide still one-shots it. Then Arcanine comes in, and it messes up the stuff that the Gyarados did, just using Roar, switching Sudowoodo out. My rule around this in these solo challenges is that I can just send it back in, so I don't have the Intimidate debuff, and because of that, his final 2 Pokemon are easy, but they would have been either way. The Arcanine and the Pidgeot both can't do anything against my Rock type. With Blue defeated, it is time to do the League rematches. Sudowoodo is level 91. I expected these to be easy, but as I have been learning throughout this playthrough, Sudowoodo is bad in this format. Will is up first. He leads with a Bronzong, which does not have Levitate. That means I can use Earthquake against it, which is so satisfying for once. I set up once with Rock Polish so that I would outspeed all of his remaining Pokemon, and this ends up being a very big advantage for Sudowoodo. Even though I'm two-shotting a lot of the Pokemon that it feels like I should be able to one-hit at least at this level, I am able to defeat the first Elite Four member. Koga's next. He's not really that difficult. The Skuntank likes to use Dig on turn 1, so I can use Earthquake to easily one-shot. From there, the remaining Pokemon on Koga's team are all very simple. After all, Rock Polish gives me a way to outspeed even the fastest Pokemon on his team, the Crobat. Bruno is where things get a little bit less straightforward. If I set up Rock Polish to move first against all of his Pokemon, then the Hitmontop is able to hit Sudowoodo using Close Combat, which does a decent amount of damage. Also, I don't have good moves against his team members. Like, Earthquake is technically the best against both the Hitmonlee and the Hitmonchan, but I'm taking damage along the way. And then the Hariyama takes multiple turns to knock out using Earthquake. Machamp comes in. I figured here I should probably try to flinch it on turn 1 with Rock Slide and then follow up with Earthquake, but it just lands a Dynamic Punch. Sudowoodo's confused, and I can't even go for my strategy of using Earthquake because I need to save the last PP of this move to knock out the Lucario. So I ended up deciding to black out here and just train more. After all, Sudowoodo has not been doing well. I'm probably going to need level 100 to beat Red. It turns out making it by Koga can sometimes be a problem for Sudowoodo. I never would have thought this, but the Skuntank isn't always going for Dig on turn 1. Sometimes it chooses Toxic. If it does that, then I have to use Rest elsewhere in the fight to get rid of the status condition so that I can just win this fight. Bruno again. This does not go well. I tried healing on the Hitmonlee, and that is objectively not the correct choice. This time around, I'm able to make it to the Lucario. Then I hit myself in confusion, it goes for Close Combat, and Sudowoodo faints. By this point in the run, I know that there's at least 2 more rare candies left over. One is outside of Mount Silver, and the other one is near the summit. If I have to fight Karen and Lance, I'm going to level up to at least level 96, which would put me 2 levels under the cap for Red. Doing more training here doesn't make a lot of sense. I wait until I get lucky with confusion against the Lucario, knock it out, and then move on to Karen. Her team is actually really weak to Sudowoodo. I don't have any issues here, so So now it's time to go up against Lance again. He was brutal the first time around, and of course he is worse this time. His lead is the intimidating Salamence, and he has 2 intimidate users because Gyarados is second. However, that's in team order because he's going to choose a different Pokemon before it, Garchomp. This is terrifying for Sudowoodo. It's a ground type. It's going to be hitting with super effective Earthquakes. It also has Swords Dance, and look how much damage my most effective move, Earthquake, is able to do to the dragon. That is less than a third. Even if I upped my damage here using something like Double Edge, I still would not be able to knock the Garchomp out in 2 turns. This is a very grim sign. If I want to get around the debuff, then I would have to score a critical hit against the Garchomp, and I think I would need 2 of those in a row to knock it out. I had many resets before I realized that it might actually be better to flinch the Garchomp over and over again with Rock Slide and then knock it out this way. I score a lucky critical hit while trying to pull this off, bringing the Garchomp down to orange health. I then go for Earthquake, but it still doesn't do enough damage. Garchomp's able to one-hit. Oh great, because of a critical hit. Although I'm not sure that crit really mattered, he was at +2. So I tried one more time, and no, it's not gonna work. We're gonna black out here to Lance, and I guess we have to train, probably to level 100, just to win this battle. Well, there is something else I can do first. I'm gonna grab the rare candy in the Whirl Islands, just outside of Lugia's chamber, and then I return to Voltorb Flip. I want to buy both Double Edge and another TM for Rest. This way I can use the move reminder to teach Woodhammer in its place, and then I can get Rest back later if I need it for red. I fight the League again. This levels Sudowoodo up to 98. I use one more rare candy, boosting it to 99, and then I take on Lance again. So, how much damage is Woodhammer going to do to the Garchomp? I really hope that I can get a 2-shot, and in this case, I can. Well, I actually get a 1-shot because I score a critical hit. That is perfect. Next is Gyarados. Bad news. Intimidate number 2. Now, my attack stat has been lowered by 2 stages. I was hoping here that I could just survive the waterfalls and then knock out his remaining flying-type Pokemon. However, the Gyarados knows Thunder Wave, so it paralyzes Sudowoodo, putting me in a really bad position for the remainder of the battle. I'm holding the leftovers, and I've knocked out his most powerful Pokemon, so I committed to playing out the remainder of the fight. Even with some bad luck, I figured that I could pull it off. I'm nearing the end of the fight. Altaria comes in. I'm paralyzed. Of course it's going to move first. It sets up double team, boosting its evasion. I'm missing because of that, and then it goes for Perish Song. By the way, I'm using Woodhammer against the Altaria because I'm running out of PP on Rock Slide, and I want to save one of these moves for the Charizard that's eventually going to come out. Either way, it doesn't matter. The Perish Song gets me, so that's another loss. And they just keep coming, because when Woodhammer isn't critical hitting the Garchomp, things are so much worse. The critical hit allowed me to bypass the negative stat changes to my attack stat. This doubled Woodhammer's original damage before Intimidate triggered, but after Intimidate triggers, Woodhammer is doing roughly 1/3, so it takes 3 turns to knock out Garchomp, giving it time to set up once with Swords Dance and then knock Sudowoodo out with a boosted Earthquake. In the end, I figured out what I was doing wrong. I shouldn't be using my current set, Rock Polish, Rock Slide, Earthquake, and Woodhammer. It's just not good enough for a long fight against Lance, and it is going to be a long fight. What I need to do instead is teach Rest in the place of Earthquake. Now I have Rock Polish so I can set up and I'm going to outspeed the remainder of Lance's Pokemon. I have Rest so I can get rid of Paralysis once I luck through the Garchomp. And what it takes to knock it out is a critical hit with Woodhammer. I had to wait for that. It is so frustrating that this is the solution. Anyways, I knock out the Garchomp, move on to the Gyarados, get hit by Intimidate again, paralyzed of course because of Thunder Wave, but then on the Dragonite I can use Rest to heal up and get rid of the status condition. Lance's Dragonite is hitting for decent damage with Draco Meteor, but I can just stall this move out. From there, the Altaria and the Charizard should be straightforward, provided the Altaria does not go for Perish Song. I was so scared this was how the battle was going to end. However, this time around, with my speed intact, he sends in Charizard first before the Altaria, which is a big benefit to Sudowoodo. Altaria comes in next. I'm not able to one-shot, but 2 Rock Slides later, it goes down, and with that, I have finally defeated Lance number 2. By the way, at this point in the playthrough, I was sort of losing my mind. Here is a little bit of live audio so that you can see how I was feeling after this battle. 97 faults. Oh my god, I'm losing my mind. I have such a bad headache right now. Rock types. It's Nosepass. It's Sudowoodo. It's rock types. No. This is painful. And I hate to say it, but the pain is gonna continue. Just outside of Mount Silver, I pick up one more rare candy. This is the last one that I'm gonna be able to use because Sudowoodo is now level 100. This does open up to me another strategy. I can teach double team to Sudowoodo and then use the evasion boosting move to defeat red. However, there's a complication with that tactic in Pokemon HeartGold, because at the top of Mount Silver there is a snowstorm, meaning that Blizzard is able to bypass accuracy checks, and 3 of his Pokemon have access to the strong ice-type move. Since this is my first playthrough series in Pokemon HeartGold and I'm just kind of learning the game and feeling things out, I really wanted to see if Sudowoodo could do this without using double team, so I'm treating it only as a measure of last resort. This is how red went without it. Pikachu's first. Now, I wasn't sure if I should just attack with Rock Slide and try and knock it out or use Rock Polish right away, but I think Rock Polish is the better choice so that I move first against all of Red's remaining Pokemon. I take damage from Thunderbolt, which does roughly half to Sudowoodo, but I can recover that with leftovers. Now, moment of truth, will Rock Slide one-shot the Pikachu? And the answer is yes, I didn't need Earthquake. Next is Blastoise, and I have Wood Hammer to counter this water type. With an effective power of 240, it does massive damage, but the turtle survives with a sliver of health and attacks Sudowoodo with Focus Blast. It leaves me with only 15 hit points, so hail damage gets the knockout. Okay, maybe my damage roll was just bad and normally I'm gonna one-shot the Blastoise. And the answer is no, the Blastoise survives with more health in the next battle and it ends the same way. I tried going for Rock Slide to get a flinch on the Blastoise, I crit it. Rock Slide is not able to one-shot when it gets a crit, Blastoise survives with the sliver, however the hail damage knocks it out. This is great, and it missed its Focus Blast, which is ideal for me. Lapras comes in next. Here, Wood Hammer is once again going to be the go-to move. It's doing a little bit more damage when compared with Rock Slide. Thing is, this Pokemon also survives on a sliver of health. Remember when I said Sudowoodo just barely doesn't have enough attack? Yeah, it just barely doesn't have enough attack. This will be solved in a follow-up playthrough because I won't have to run the hardy nature. Just going for an adamant nature is going to so fundamentally change how this run has felt up until this point. I am able to knock out the Lapras because he gets stuck in a healing loop. But Venusaur comes in next. I don't really have good moves against it. I tried going for Rock Slide, it misses, and then Venusaur gets me with Giga Drain. Taking hail damage every turn is negating the effects of the leftovers, and I can potentially play around this in Generation 4 with Sandstorm. For Rock-type Pokemon, it also boosts their special defense stats, meaning I'll take less damage from Blastoise, Lapras, and Venusaur. I tried setting up Rock Polish and Sandstorm against Pikachu, but then I get caught in a healing loop, which is buying time for Sandstorm to wear off, so this is not going to be the solution. I tried a couple more fights using the older moveset, but no, this still isn't working. So, I guess it's time to try Double Team. I know I said it was going to be a measure of last resort, but we are approaching the 5-hour mark in this playthrough, and I was so exhausted. Like I said earlier in that one live clip, I had a splitting headache by this point, and I really just wanted this to be done. There is the potential for Sudowoodo to win here using Attract instead of Double Team, but that is going to require way more luck. You're going to need to get good Attract luck on at least 2 or 3 Pokemon, and it just felt like Double Team was more consistent. Plus, I'm not really proving anything if I win with Attract. We know that pretty much every Pokemon can win this game if they're using Attract. This has been one of the main nuggets of wisdom that I have taken away from this first playthrough series so far. Another piece of key insight is if you're using Double Team to beat Red, you have to also use a weather move. In this case, it makes sense to go for Sandstorm, so my final set ends up being Sandstorm, Rock Slide, Rest, and Double Team. Sandstorm makes sure that I take less damage from the Pikachu, giving me time to set up with Double Team. It also means there's going to be no more hail for the remainder of the battle, so Blizzard won't bypass all of my setup. Even using this set, it is not an instant win. I lose 5 times in a row before finally I am able to set up to +6 with evasion and then sweep through Red's Pokemon. This playthrough was so frustrating. Rock-type Pokemon are terrible in this solo format. By the way, I am recording this voiceover the same week that I did my Onix playthrough in Pokemon Red, which is currently my longest live stream of all time. I spent 8.5 hours trying to beat Pokemon Red with that rock type. I've said before that I don't really like playing solo challenges with water-type Pokemon. They tend to kind of frustrate me. I think they're going to be better than they actually end up being, but I think today I can officially say that my new least favorite type is the rock type. Like, just imagine for a moment how well Nosepass is going to do in Pokemon HeartGold, or maybe Geodude. What about even Golem? That Pokemon might really struggle. Today, Sudowoodo clocks in with a final time of 4 hours, 51 minutes, and 37 seconds, with 85 resets, 11 blackouts, totaling as 96 faults. It beat the game at level 100, relying on Double Team, with a game time of 13 hours and 18 minutes. I don't have a lot to say for this outro. This is by far the worst playthrough I have done in Pokemon HeartGold so far. The second worst run that I've done was with Typhlosion. It got a time of 4 hours and 47 seconds, with a total of 41 faults. Honestly, Typhlosion feels like it was really good compared to Sudowoodo. It feels sort of wrong to me to have these two Pokemon in the same tier, but for now I'm gonna leave them both there. I'll have to rebalance this tier list at some point in the future, and I just don't think right now is the moment to do that. I like to only do it once a year for consistency's sake. So next I need a break from rock types. I want to play a Pokemon that I think is gonna do pretty well. So next time in HeartGold, I'm gonna come back and see how Ambipom would do in a solo playthrough. It's not a Swords Dance user, but it does have a fantastic ability which can pair very well with a different setup move. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much, it means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.